Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will learn about Flexbox layout. A flex container expands items to fill available free space or shrink them to prevent overflow. This makes it perfect for designing layouts for which the size is unknown or flexible. Block elements lay out vertically, inline elements lay out horizontally, but flex elements can create layouts both horizontal and vertical based on certain properties. Let's try to understand some of the concepts of flex layout. Say we have this flex layout. The main div which has the flex property is called container, and the elements inside this container are called items. As I mentioned earlier, the layout direction can either be horizontal or vertical. For horizontal layouts, we have two options, row and row reverse. For vertical layout as well, we have two options, column and column reverse. We have a main axis which goes along the direction. So if the layout direction is row or row reverse, then the main axis is horizontal. We also have a cross axis which goes perpendicular to the main axis. So if the main axis is horizontal, then the cross axis is vertical. Similarly, if the layout direction is column or column reverse, then the main axis is vertical because it goes along the direction, and the cross axis is horizontal because it is perpendicular to the main axis. The flex layout has a start and an end point. Based on the direction, there can be different start and end points. Let's say we have this flex layout with direction row. In this case, flex start will be on the left hand side and flex end will be on the right hand side. Similarly, say we have this flex layout with direction row reverse. In this case, the flex start will be on the right hand side and the flex end will be on the left hand side. Similarly, say we have this flex layout with direction column. In this case, flex start will be on the top and flex end will be on the bottom. Similarly, say we have this flex layout with direction column reverse. In this case, the flex start will be on the bottom and flex end will be on the top. Don't worry if this feels like there's so much to remember. We will be exploring a lot of flex properties and we'll come across these concepts over and over. I'm sure by the time you are done with flex, you will know all about these concepts. That's all for today, guys. If there's something that you did not understand, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care. Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will learn about flex container properties. Let's start with the first property, display flex. This property is used to tell the browser that the div and its children will follow flex layout rules. So let's try giving this div display flex. So coming here, so we've already got this container here. So let's change the display value, say display flex. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all the items are moved next to each other and are taking only enough space to wrap the content. By default, the direction is row, but we can change that using the flex direction property. So let's try that. So flex direction, let's say row. And now when I save it, nothing changes because as I just mentioned, row is the default value. So that's how these are positioned. Let's try another value, row reverse. Let's save it. And as you can see, they aren't just aligned on the right. So if you see here, the first element is div 1, the second is div 2, then div 3, then div 4. So if I just bring this down here and I just remove and save it. So as you can see, the div is starting from 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you make it row reverse, they don't just move on the right, they start from the right. All right. Similarly, let's try another value, which is column. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all the elements are stacked. So we've got the first on the top and the last on the bottom. Similarly, it accepts another value, column reverse. Let's save it. And as you can see, the elements are starting from the bottom. So div 1 is at the bottom. So div 1, then on top of that div 2, and topmost is div 4. Let's just bring it back to row for now. Let's save it. So as you can see, these elements are next to each other. So there's a lot of empty space over here. So let's try to manage this available space. Say we want all the elements to have equal space between them. For that, we can use another property called justify content. So let's bring up a code editor, justify content, say space between. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all the available space is divided equally between all these elements. So if you notice this justify content property, it works on the main axis and it accepts some more values. So let's try that. So instead of space between, let's say we want all these items to have the same space around them also. So instead of space between, we could do space around. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all the available space is divided around them. So we've got space here, here, and even on the left and right hand side. Similarly, we can move everything at the start. So let's say flex start. So all these items, they move to the start. Similarly, we can move them to the end. So we could do flex end. So unlike direction row reverse, flex end moves everything to the end of the main axis. So as you can see, we've got div 1, 2, 3, 4. Similarly, we can move it at the center as well. So for that, we can just use this value center. And now all the elements are in the center horizontally or on the main axis. Similarly, let's try this property for column as well. So let's change this to column. Let's save it. And because there is no extra space, so let's increase the height, say 100 viewport height. Let's save it. And right now justify content is center, so that's why all these items are in the center across the main axis, which is vertical now because this is a column. Similarly, let's try space between. Let's save it. And now as you can see, there's equal space between all the items. Let's try changing it to space around. Let's save it. And now as you can see, there's space on the top and bottom as well. Similarly, let's try changing it to flex start. Because this is a column, so everything moved to the top. We can also move everything at the bottom by using flex end. So everything came down. All right, so let's bring everything back to normal right now. So flex direction row, let's remove the height. All right, so we've got this normal flex container. Let's say we had more items. So let's just come here. So coming to our index.html file, let's copy it and paste it here. Now we have double the items. Let's paste it again. And now as you can see, we've got our item is a bit shrinked because the div and the number is on the next line now. Let's paste it again. And now as you can see, the content is overflowing because Flex cannot shrink it anymore. So that's why the content is overflowing. By default, Flex doesn't wrap content in the next line, but we can do that using the property flex wrap. So let's give it a try. So coming back here, let's say flex wrap. It accepts a value wrap. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all that overflowed content is coming on the next line. Similarly, it accepts value wrap reverse. Let's save it. As you can see, the content starts from the second line and it goes till the end. And when it's about to overflow, it moves to the line above it. So that's how this wrap reverse works. And it also accepts this value, no wrap. So in case you don't want to wrap your elements, you could simply do no wrap. Similarly, let's try this property for column as well. So coming back here, let's remove this. Let's change it to column. Let's save it. And right now, as you can see, there's no overflow because we did not give a fixed height to our flex element. So it's scrolling vertically. So let's give it a height. Say 100 viewport height. Let's save it. And as you can see, now it's overflowing outside. So let's change that. So let's say flex wrap. Let's give it the value wrap. And now as you can see, once it reaches the end vertically, it creates another column. And once it reaches the end, it creates another column. Let's try giving it a value reverse wrap. So wrap reverse, let's save it. And now as you can see, it starts from the end. So one column, then two column, and then the third column. And that's all for today, guys. If there is something that you did not understand, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care. Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will learn how to align Flex items. Flex provides us with two properties for this purpose: align items and align content. Let's talk about the first property, align items. This property is used to align items along the cross axis. So if you have a flex with direction row, so this will align items vertically. Or if you have a flex with direction column, it would align items horizontally. Let's give this a try. So let's bring up our code editor. Let's bring it up here. So let's give display flex to our container. So display flex, let's save it. And by default, it is in direction row. Let's try giving it this property. So align items, and let's say stretch. Let's save it. So stretch is the default value. So by default, it stretches the content vertically. So if we increase the height of our div, it should increase the height of our items as well. So let's say height 400 pixels. Let's save it. And as you can see, the height of our items also increased. It accepts some more values, so let's give them a try. So it accepts this value flex start. So it aligns all the items at the start. Similarly, it accepts another value, flex end. So it aligns everything at the end. It accepts another value called center. It moves everything to the center vertically. Similarly, let's try it for direction column. So let's go to direction here. Flex direction, let's say column, let's save it. Let's increase the height a bit, say 700 pixels. And as you can see, it is aligned in the center horizontally. And why is that? Because our flex is in the direction column. So the cross axis is horizontal. Similarly, let's try moving it to the start. So flex start, let's save it. And as you can see, it moved to the start of our cross axis. Similarly, let's try flex end. And as you can see, it moved to the end of our cross axis. Similarly, let's try stretch. Let's save it. And as you can see, it's stretching all the elements across the cross axis. That's all for align items property. So moving on to the next one, which is align content. This property is also used to align items along the cross axis. Think of this as justify content for cross axis. So if you remember, we would when we use justify content, it would move the content or items around the main axis. But here with align content, it moves the elements across the cross axis. This property works only when there are more than one line of items. So first let's bring it back to normal. So let's change it to row. Let's remove this align items property. Let's remove the height. Let's save it. So let's try this align content. So if I say align content and I say center, nothing happens because it needs to have multiple rows. So let's do that. So coming here, let's copy it and paste it here once again. And as you can see, the content is overflowing, so we need to wrap it to bring it to next line. So coming here, so flex wrap, and let's go to value wrap. And now as you can see, we've got two rows here, but there isn't any extra space vertically. And because this is a row and we're talking about the cross axis, we need more space vertically. So let's do that. So let's just increase the height, say 700 pixels. Let's save it. And as you can see, the content is in the center of the screen vertically or across the cross axis. Similarly, let's try bringing it to the start. Let's save it. And now as you can see, it is at the start of cross axis. Similarly, we can bring it to the end. And now as you can see, it is at the end of the cross axis. So just like we had a space between and space around in justify content, we can have that here as well. Let's say space between, let's save it. And now as you can see, all the extra space is between these two rows. Similarly, we can have space around, let's save it. And now as you can see, all the extra space is divided around these rows. So some is on the top, some in between, and some at the bottom. Similarly, we can use the value stretch, let's save it. And now as you can see, both these rows are stretching across as much as possible. Let's see how to align items in the center of the flex. So center vertically and center horizontally. Let's remove these extra divs. Let's save it. All right, so we just have 4. Let's say we want to bring it to the center. So first, it came to the center vertically. Now, to bring it center horizontally, we can use justify content. Again, center, let's save it. And as you can see, our content is in the center of the div. Similarly, let's try this property for direction column. So coming back here, let's change it to column, let's save it. And because we've aligned content stretch and align content works with the cross axis, So all these columns are stretched equally across the cross axis. Similarly, let's try changing the values. Instead of stretch, let's say start. Let's save it. So all the content is moved to the start of the cross axis. Similarly, let's say flex end. So all the content is at the end. Let's try space between. Let's save it. And as you can see, all the available space is between these columns. Similarly, let's try space around. And as you can see, all the spaces around these columns. Let's try center. And as you can see, all the items are now in the center horizontally. That's all for align content property. Now that we know how to align items, let's see how to bring them to the center of the flex. For this purpose, we can simply use align item center to bring them in the center along cross axis, and use justify content to bring them in center along main axis. So let's give it a try. Let's remove this. Let's save it. First, let's reduce the number of items. So that will give us a bit of clarity. So let's remove this and this as well. So now we're just left with 4 items. So coming back here, let's give it align items to bring it center across the cross axis. So align item and center. And now as you can see, it is in the center horizontally. Now to bring it in the center vertically, we could simply use justify content. So justify content and center. Let's save it. And now as you can see, these 4 items are in the center of the div. That's all for today, guys. If there is something that you did not understand, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care. Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will learn about flex item properties. So these properties are used on flex items, not flex container. Let's start with the first one. Say we want to stretch all these items to take the available space horizontally. And because this is direction row, so what we mean is we want to stretch them across the main axis. So if you wanted to stretch them across a vertical axis or cross axis, we could have simply used align items. But we want to stretch them across horizontally or across the main axis. So we could simply use another property called flex grow. It accepts a number value. So by default, this value is 0. So if I add this property here, flex grow, and let's give it a value, say 0, nothing changes because this is the default value. But here, what we want to do is make all the elements grow by the same size. So we could simply give it a value 1. Let's save it. And as you can see here, all these elements are expanded with this same width. So they've got equal size in all the available space. Or let's say we want the second item to be twice the size of other items. So in that case, we could simply select the second item. So item and a child, let's say second. Let's change the background color, say bisque or biscuit, I don't know. So let's save it. And now as you can see, our second item has the background color. So let's give it a flex grow value. So let's say 2. Let's save it. And now as you can see, it has double the width of other items. Similarly, say we wanted an item to be smaller than other items, we could simply use another property called flex shrink. So instead of flex grow, let's try using flex shrink. Let's say 2. So we want this to be half the size of other elements. Let's save it. And as you can see, nothing happens here. Why is that? Because this flex grow property is also being applied to this item. And flex grow and flex shrink don't work together. So first we need to do flex grow 0. So we are sending it back to the default value. And now as you can see, the second div is smaller than other divs. Let's remove all these shrink and grow properties. Let's save it. Let's remove this also. So as you can see, by default, the items take just enough width to wrap the content. But we can give these items a minimum width. For that, Flex has another property called Flex Basis. So let's try that. So Flex Basis, let's say 120 pixels. Let's save it. And now as you can see, all these items have a default minimum value of 120. Flex has this another cool property. It helps to change the sequence of these items. It is called order. And by default, all the flex items have a default value of 0. So to bring something at the start, we could do order -1. So let's give it a try. Let's say we want to move this second one on the first position. So we could just give it a value, order -1. Let's save it. And now as you can see, the second element is moved to the first position. Similarly, say we wanted to move this at the end. So by default, everything has a value 0 and 1 is greater than 0. So we could simply use 1. And as you can see here, the second div is moved at the end. Now say if you wanted to align particular items, so in that case, you could use the property align self. So let's comment this for now. Let's save it and everything is back to normal. Now say we want the second and fourth element to have a different align value. So in that case, first let's select the second and fourth element. So for that, we could do something like this, item and a child even. Let's give it a background color. Let's save it. And now as you can see, the second and fourth element has a different background color. Let's say we want them to be aligned in the center. So we could do something like this, align self and center. Let's save it. And nothing changed because there is no extra space vertically. So let's add some height here. Let's say height and 400 pixels. Let's save it. And as you can see, the second and fourth element is aligned in the center. Similarly, let's say we wanted odd ones to be aligned in the start. So we could do something like this. And a child and odd. Let's say align self and start. Let's save it. And as you can see, the odd elements are aligned at the start and even are aligned in the center. That's all for today, guys. If there is something that you did not understand, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care. Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, we will try to use Flex to design this top bar. So right now we have all the components. We've got the logo, the menu items, search box, notification bell, and the profile pic. So we just have to use Flex to design this layout. So let's give it a try. Let's bring up our code editor. So as you can see here, inside the nav, we've got all these different components. Let's bring up our code editor here. So what we want is we want two groups. First group, this Ariota and these three menu items to be together. And then another group to bring the search box, notification, and profile pic together. And for that purpose, we can use div. So let's try that. So we've got div here. All right, let's save it. So coming back here, let's give it an ID, say left menu. Let's save it. Let's add some styles to this left menu. So now what we want is everything to be next to each other. So for that, we can simply use display flex. Let's save it. Similarly, for the second set, we can wrap it in a div and use display flex. So let's just wrap all these things together. Let's give it an ID, say right menu. Let's save it. Let's give this also display flex. Let's save it. And now as you can see, both the menu items are grouped. And as you can notice, these menu items aren't aligned in the center vertically. So for that, we can use align items. And we could simply use the value center. And now as you can see, for the first one, everything is center aligned. Similarly, let's do it for the right menu as well. So align items, center. And now as you can see, everything is center in the vertical. Now another thing that we need is, we need to put them next to each other, but with all the space in the middle. So let's try that. So if you see our code here, so both these divs are inside nav. So we can use display flex on nav as well. So nav and display flex. Let's save it. And as you can see, both are next to each other, but we want space in between. So does that ring any bell? We can simply use justify content and space between. Let's save it. And as you can see, these are in the same line, but have all the space in between. Similarly, we need some space over here between all these elements. So let's coming back here. So for the notification icon, we already have an ID. So let's give it margin left, say 16 pixels, and margin right, say 16 pixels. Let's bring it down here. Let's save it. And as you can see, we've got the same top bar that we wanted to design. And that's how we use Flex to design layouts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any doubts, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care. Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we will learn how to use a responsive grid using Pure Flex. And as you can see on the screen, I've got this grid. And for the laptop screens, it has 4 cards in one row. When I reduce the size, the margin goes away. And after that, the cards, they start to reduce in size. They reduce until they reach a minimum width. And after that, the card is sent to the next row. And we only have 3 cards in one row now. Again, when I try to reduce this width, because the cards are already at a minimum width, so they just move on the next line. And on the mobile screens, we've got 2 cards. So let's try creating this responsive grid using Flexbox. And as you can see, we've already got these cards here. So let's bring up our code editor. Let's bring it up here. All right, so to start with Flexbox, first we need a container. So as you can see here, this section, it wraps all our articles. So this can be given display value flex. So coming down here, let's say section and display flex. Let's save it. And as you can see, all the items are in one row, but the flex is overflowing. So for that, we can do flex wrap, and let's give it a value wrap. And as you can see, we've got this grid, but it's not in the center of the screen. So let's do that. So for that, we can simply use justify content and center. Now, as you can see, the entire grid is in the center of the screen. Right now, we have 3 cards in one row, but we want 4. So coming up to the block card element. So right now, the width is 300 pixels. So let's say we want 4 items, so we could do 23% and 2% for the margins left and right. Let's save it. And now, as you can see, we've got 4 cards in one row. So if I try to resize my browser, the cards are reducing. But they keep reducing, they don't stop at a minimum width because we haven't specified a minimum width. So let's give that as well. So minimum width, say 200 pixels. Let's save it. Let's try reducing the size of the browser. So as you can see, my cards are getting smaller. And once they reach this 200 pixels, the cards move to the next line. Also, if you notice here, so once you reduce, this extra spacing first goes away. So let's try creating that effect. Let's see why this is happening. So coming up here in the main section, we've given padding. So as you can see here, we've got padding left and right 12%. So let's remove that. Let's make it 0. And now, as you can see, the cards are pretty big and we don't want that. We want our grid to have this spacing on left and right. So let's give it a max width, say 1200 pixels. Let's save it. And as you can see, we've got a lot of space on the right hand side. So if we could bring our grid to the center of the screen, that should do the trick. So to bring something to the center, we could simply use margin auto. So let's give it. So margin top bottom 0 and left right auto. Let's save it. And as you can see, we've got this similar spacing on left and right. And when I reduce it, my cards, they don't reduce in size, but this spacing goes away. And once I reach the minimum level, the cards start to reduce in size. And that's exactly what we wanted to design. That's all for today, guys. If there is something that you did not understand, feel free to drop a comment and we will discuss it. See you in the next video. Bye and take care.